Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'm going to be restoring my Pothos vine here. As you can see, it's not looking too healthy at the moment. And I think the reason for that is because this pot that it's in is currently far too small for the size of the plant. As you can see, there's several of the leaves are either gone yellow or starting to go brown and die off on the lower section of the plant. I think that's because there's not enough nutrients for the size of the pot that the plant is in. As you can see that the plant is really quite large. It comes right across here, right down here, and it even starts going behind the sofa now. So it definitely needs a larger pot. I was originally going to train it up over this curtain rail here, but with the curtain being there, it's just a bit too tricky and it's not going to really work very well. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this end down here into a pot, and that will be propagated into a new plant which I'll be able to cut off. I'll leave this section hanging down. With that new plant that I propagate, I'm going to put it up next to the existing plant in that black saucer that you can just see on the left there. Then that will be able to grow right up and over the top of this room here. I'll have a much further growing distance on the other side. Come right round the room all the way to the far side of the curtain. So it'll give me a nice long reach for the plant. And what I'm going to do with the original plant is I'm going to give it a much larger pot and some new compost. Hopefully that'll reinvigorate it. Because at the moment I think the growth has been slowed down by the lack of growing space it has for its roots. So I'll be repotting this one into a much larger pot. That'll hopefully encourage some new growth. What would be nice is maybe to have a new shoot coming out here to replace these brown leaves there. And with cutting the end off there, it shouldn't be really growing much more there. It might put a new shoot out from that end, but I'm hoping I can get some new shoots to form further back. What I might do is tie a bit of string around it tightly. What that does is it constricts the flow of water, nutrients and hormones, and that can often encourage the shoot to form further back in the plant. So I'll try that as well. So I'll set the camera up now and I'll go ahead with transplanting the original mother plant. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead, take off all the dead leaves. The yellow leaves I'm going to leave because they should be taking the nutrients back into the plant anyway. So I don't want to take any of the nutrients out of the plant by removing a leaf which hasn't been fully recycled by the plant yet. So I'll go ahead now and take off all the brown and dead leaves. So that's the plant certainly looking a little bit tidier now. You can see there's still some yellow leaves on it and some ones which are just starting to turn yellow. They'll go brown and dead within a few weeks, so they'll be taken off soon as well. So you'll see there will be quite a bit of bare patches on the lower stem. As I said, I'm hoping that they're going to regrow some new leaves from the base and I can get it to be retrained. So the next thing I need to do is actually untie it from the wall, because at the moment the pot is right up here on the left hand side. You can kind of see right up here is where the pot is, and there's no way I can repot it whilst it's up there. It is tied on here and here, so I need to take those ties off so I can pull it down and get it onto a table so I can start repotting. So as you saw from that, I did have a minor disaster. Unfortunately the stem was much heavier than I thought, and the pot was quite dry because I haven't watered it for a few days, and so it did fall off. But luckily it hasn't snapped. I thought it might snap, but the vine proved quite strong. So I just need to clean up a bit of compost that I've left on the floor, and then I'll go ahead to the next stage. So I've got my Pothos vine now ready for replanting into a larger pot. I'm going to have a quick look at the roots before I repot it, and I'll see if there's any kind of issues with the roots, and that's maybe why it was struggling. But as I was saying before, I think the main issue is probably just the fact that the pot is so small and the plant is so large. So looking at it, it is quite loose on the surface, but we'll try and tap it out and see if it comes out easily enough. If it's pot bound, it could be a little bit tricky. It certainly feels like there's a lot of roots in there. I can feel it's really tugging on. So I'm going to have to really give it a bit of a squeeze and really tease it out of the pot, because it's going to be quite well pot bound by the feels of things. That's it taken out of the pot. You can see that it is pretty pot bound. There's a lot of roots in there. It's mostly filled up with roots, and it just seems to have two major roots coming out and about three smaller ones going in, and they quickly branch out into quite a good root system. It's quite dry as well, so I'm not worried about overwatering. And there's certainly no rot either, so I've not been overwatering it. That's one of the problems with Pothos vines, they're quite easy to overwater. But you can see the ends of the roots are quite healthy. There's some new growth coming on them, same here as well. So it's actually quite a healthy plant, so I'm not too worried about that. I was a bit concerned with the lower leaves falling off, Quite often that can be a sign of overwatering, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm going to plant this now. I'm going to make sure the stem is a bit more covered. Over the time the compost seems to have sunk slightly and exposed the stem. So I'm just going to pot this in here. It's a little bit tricky as you've got this still connected. I've still got this connected to the wall, but I'll just pop it in like that. All I need to do now is cover it in compost and pot it round. So I'm not going to firm it down at all because I think it likes quite a loose mix. The pothos vine does become quite susceptible to overwatering, so for that reason I've added quite a bit of perlite to the mix. It's just a multi-purpose compost with a lot of perlite added. It's quite a rich mix as well, so that it's going to be well fed, and there's going to be quite a lot of moisture that can be retained in the compost for it. But as I say, that perlite will help against that. And I'm going to pot this in just a little bit more compost than I would usually. The reason for that is I find this does sink down quite a bit once you water it in, and also it's not a problem if I cover the stem slightly. With a free draining mix, the stem won't rot, and also it's going to send out small new roots out of the stem because it roots very easily along the stem. So there we are, that's it in the new pot. I'll just put it up in its old position now. So that's it up now with its new pot. I'm going to have to give it a larger saucer. As you can see, that saucer is far too small for it, but I'll be giving that a larger saucer soon. So it should do much better in that larger pot. Should put on a lot of new growth. I'm going to leave it as it is for a little while. I'm going to be careful with the watering as well, because the roots aren't covering the whole pot. If I give it too much water, what will happen is the bottom of the pot will stay really wet because there's no roots in there yet. So I'll be a little bit careful when it comes to the watering, but otherwise it should do quite well. As I said, I was going to tie a string around it towards the base to try and encourage new shoots to appear. I'm going to leave that for a couple of months just until the roots have filled the pot, and then I'm going to try that. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get a cutting from this. One is the insurance policy if this does die. I don't think it's going to die because it seems to be a very healthy root system, but just in case. But the main reason I'm doing this is because it's got too long now and it's training down the bottom. There's nowhere else it can grow. So I might as well take a cutting, because I'm going to have to cut this off anyway to stop it growing too long and behind the sofa. So if I'm cutting it anyway, I might as well take a cutting and get a new plant from the process. So this is the end of the pothos vine. It's going to be very easy to make a new plant out of this. All I need to really do is bury the stem in the soil and it will grow new roots. And in fact, if you look along the older sections of the stem, there's already loads of new roots starting to grow. So pothos vines are really easy to root. You could even cut the stem off and put it in the soil and it would root. Your chance of success are a little bit lower with that, and it'll also take a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is keep it connected for now. I'm just going to find a nice section such as here. I'm going to push it down under the soil, keep it pinned, just bend the stem like so. And I'm just going to go get a stone, something heavy to weigh it down, because this will probably pop out again. So unfortunately, as I live in a flat, I couldn't actually find any stones. So what I'm going to use for now is just a jam jar to keep the weight down. But as you can see, the soil is completely covering the stem, so that should help it to root. All you need to do with the pothos vine is literally bury the stem, keep the soil damp, and within a few weeks that'll be rooted. I'll be completely happy with that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep an eye on it every couple of weeks. I'm just going to scrape away a bit of the soil, see how well the roots are developed. Once I've got a good root system established, I'm just going to cut it off at this point here, and that'll be a whole new plant ready to grow away with its own root system and leaves. And this will hopefully put out a new shoot. Quite often the new shoot does come from just behind where you cut it, so it'll probably come out from this leaf node here. But what I'm hoping for is, because this is in the dark and it's so far away from the main pot, I'm hoping that there's going to be some shoots further back on the stem, so I can put in some new growth and train up on the bare sections where the leaves have come off. But that's it for this video. As I say, that'll hopefully root within a few weeks. I can then transfer it up there and start the long process of training it along here. It's going to be probably about 3 or 4 years to get it to that length. I mean, this plant here has been there for about 3 years to get to that length. So hopefully 3 or 4 years and I can get it trained right around the room. And I'll give you guys a few updates as this project goes ahead, and we'll see how quickly it takes to get across the room.